So, hi, my name is Tracy Fair. I'm with the Mental Health Education Resource Center, and this is part of our series called Rocking Your Recovery, where we interview people who will share stories, tips, techniques, you name it, about boosting our well-being, both mentally, physically, spiritually, and whatever. So today we have a really interesting guest, and she's actually a teacher of mine, or was a teacher of mine, and where I learned about mind-body bridging and was certified with mind-body bridging through the iSystem Institute and with Niki Olsen as my instructor teacher. So I want to introduce you today to Niki, and she's coming all the way from Utah by Scream to those of us here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. So welcome, Niki.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's really good to see you.
Yes.
hmm So I invited you here today because I wanted to talk a little bit about mind-body bridging and what that means, what it is. I think a lot of people have not heard of that. And when they hear something about mind-body bridging, they think of different mindfulness techniques and maybe other stuff. And so I wanted you being an expert, you'll share something about that with us. But I wanted first, tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from and what you do, and whatever else you'd like to share.
Yeah. So I live in Utah. I grew up in the state of Oregon and moved to Utah when I was about 20 years old. We live in a little tiny town that has about 3,000 people in it, but we're right on the border of a Navajo reservation.
Mm.
So it's the largest Native American reservation in the nation. And so I work for a company full time and I'm a mental health counselor there and help people across the reservation with mental health needs. I'm married and have two little girls. Well, they're not so little anymore. They're 12 and 10.
Wow. Yeah, no, not babies anymore.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
these days, as we're recording this, we're all in quarantine.
hmm
So my day exists of work and then
hmm
homeschool. So,
So, right, you've got your girls at home. So how much of the actual instruction do you have to do?
oh, 90%.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but not because they just want somebody
hmm
next to them,
Yeah,
wanting them to, Mom, help me do
yeah,
this, help me do
yeah.
this. So, you get off work and then you do school for the
So how
evening.
do you manage to, do you have to do a lot of multitasking or like parenting and
Yes, I
professional and all together?
yeah, I have a basement kind of office, and so
hmm
they stay upstairs during the day when I'm working,
Okay.
and then when I take breaks, I go upstairs and check on them. But
hmm
typically, I'm off about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I go help them.
hmm
And
Okay.
that's kind of how I block out my time
Well, it's kind of like a new world order right now, isn't it? And I think
for
it's teaching
everyone.
us a lot of things about stress and how to all live together in one place 24/7. And I guess it's got lots of pluses and a few minuses.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yes.
So I wanted to find out a little bit more about, I don't know if you're okay with it, Niki, if you'd tell us a little bit about we were just talking about COVID. What are some of the things that might cause you a little bit of stress from day to day? I know from my own experience, a lot of the times I get worked up very quickly about something and I kind of lose a sense of proportion, and that can happen really quickly. I'm
Mhm.
getting better at it now, but especially since I've learned the MBB. But tell me a little bit about that for you. What does that mean for you, kind of getting stressed out, and what might affect you?
For me, recently, and I guess all the time is a change in routine. Like I'm a very routine person. And so when things go off plan or they're not going as I planned, then that tends to get me worked up or overwhelmed or frustrated. And so with this change of working from home and having the kids home, that stresses me out and
Yeah.
having to make sure they're getting all of their assignments done. As we kind of get into talking about mind body bridging, one of the things that happens is we get these negative storylines going. And so one of the things that I've noticed for myself is that if my kids don't get all of their work done like I think
hmm
they should, then I start feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible mother. I'm not able to help them the way I need to help them. And that's really gets me stressed out because then I go in this overdrive mode of trying to like force them to be at a certain point to make me feel better, which just is not a good systematic approach. And so I think right now that's been kind of my main stressor, is that change in routine and just feeling like, um, how do I keep up with everything that is now on my plate to do, um, when it wasn't before.
So what do you think it is, when we go into overdrive? Because you mentioned that, your thoughts start to kind of escalate to some degree. You start to do a lot of self-judgment by the sounds of it. There's this critic that comes in
Mm-hmm.
and causes this explosion or a gradual workup, if not an all out explosion. What do you think that's all about from what you understand about people and as a counselor and maybe as a mind body bridging practitioner as well?
Yeah, we can maybe just dive right into what mind body bridging
Sure.
is. I think
Yeah.
that explains it, is that
Hmm.
we all have a system inside of us that wakes up when life isn't exactly the way we think it should be, right? So mine was waking up because my routine should be the same. I should be able to keep up. My kids should learn quickly. All these shoulds about life were
Hmm.
not happening. Or even me thinking about those shoulds not happening that way
Hmm.
was causing that system inside of me to wake up. We all have this system. We call it the identity system.
Hmm.
And when it's awake, its main goal is to develop these thoughts inside of us that make us feel like there's something wrong with us. Like that situation isn't happening the way it should because I am wrong or bad or broken or damaged.
Hmm.
And so it just spins this storyline, like I said, like I'm a bad mother, right? Like they're not able to keep up because I'm a bad mother. That's the reason, right?
Right. And so you said the I system stands for identity system. So when you say I'm a bad mother, is that the truth or what is this identity system thing?
Yeah, and that's kind of the reason we call it the identity system, is we over identify with these thoughts as who we are as people, right? So if I have the thought, which there's nothing wrong with having that thought, like thoughts aren't bad. But what happens is when the identity system captures that type of thought, it really embeds it into making us think like, that's just who I am. Like that's all I'll ever be. And so then if we start believing that's our identity, we don't want that to be our identity, right? Like I don't want to be a bad mother. And
Right.
so we go into this overdrive mode called fixer mode,
Hmm.
which in general we're feeling broken, right? And if something's broken, what do we want to do?
Hmm.
Fix it. Right?
Which makes
So,
sense, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then we start fixing ourselves, but the problem
Hmm.
is I was just having the thought that I was a bad mother. Just because we think something doesn't actually make it true. Like if
Right.
I start thinking that the chair underneath me is yellow, it doesn't turn it yellow,
Hmm.
right? It's
Right.
just a thought.
Hmm.
But if we believe that it is and we start acting as if it is, maybe I'll paint the chair because I thought it was
Hmm.
yellow, right? It didn't need painting, right? And so
Hmm.
we have to recognize these thoughts as thoughts, or we will go in this overdrive of trying to fix ourselves. And we're really fixing something that's not broken.
Okay, just
So,
want to just
yeah.
interrupt you there for just a second because a lot of the self-help stuff that's out there will sometimes say they're not saying that we're bad or there's something wrong, but a lot of it is geared towards enhancing or improving and sometimes downright fixing.
Mhm.
So what is the difference between becoming better or fixing?
Good question. I love it. Okay. So the reason there's nothing wrong, or there is no difference between a fixer, like what we want to do to fix ourselves, and just a natural progression of becoming better. The actual act, there's no difference, right?
Right.
The difference is the reason why we're doing them. So
Okay.
when our identity system is awake, the only purpose for me teaching my kids math would be to prove that I'm a good mother, right? Well, I'm
Okay.
already a good mother, so I'm never
Yeah.
going to prove that concept false
Mm-hmm.
by teaching them more and more math. So I'm just going to have to do it over and over and over again and burn myself out.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But if that system is asleep and I'm just in what we call our natural self, like I'm just Nikki, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm teaching my kids math because they need to learn math, right?
Okay.
Like I'm
Yeah.
not teaching them. It's just a
Hmm.
natural, like, yeah, that's what needs to happen. They have math homework. I need to sit down with them and do that. And I'm not doing it to prove something about myself.
Okay. So there's not that kind of pressure or that drive behind it that says, I have to be better, I'm not good enough. So, and that really takes away from actually being able to teach your kids anyway, doesn't it? Because
Absolutely.
you may be very worked up and tense, as part of that whole experience.
Yep. You say things you regret. You don't pick up on things that they need to learn. They feel this disappointment from me, right? Like you're just never feel satisfied with what I'm doing,
Yeah.
right? And so then it perpetuates this distancing of our relationship
Hmm.
in that.
So this is why a lot of parents don't want to do homework with their kids.
That's
And
why
it's
I
probably
don't.
because their system gets worked up in the process, and it might accentuate a lot of things. It preys on kind of people's weaknesses, right? Or what they feel are that system tells us that we're not good at. I'm not good at
Exactly.
parent, or I'm not good at math, or I'm not good at this. And then it just drives that state of maybe perfectionism or whatever it is that eventually will bring us down too.
Mhm. Well, and that's the thing that bomb or the thing that sets off this system is it thinks life should be perfect.
Hmm.
Life has to be this way and it requires it to be that way. And that's just not life, right? Life isn't
Yeah.
going to be
Hmm.
perfect. It's okay to have wants and desires and goals. We
Hmm.
call those preferences. Like, yeah, I'd
Hmm.
prefer that my kids already knew math,
Yeah.
right? That's not going to
But yeah.
happen. So,
Mm,
recognizing those, and I use the analogy of a bomb because we don't necessarily want to change those thoughts into something else. Like we don't change that bomb into something else.
right.
We just want to take the fuse off of that bomb
Okay.
so it doesn't blow up when it doesn't happen that way. So when my kids don't do what I think they should do, then
Hmm.
it's like taking that fuse off of the bomb. And
Hmm.
now it doesn't blow up and I don't feel that way about myself anymore because
Hmm.
it just becomes a thought and it
Right.
becomes a preference and what I would like to have happen. And I'm still
Hmm.
making that a goal for myself
You still
and
want them to
improvement.
learn, you still want to help to deliver that, but you don't have that huge expectation or requirement. I think they call it a requirement, don't
Yep.
they, in the mind body bridging?
Yep.
That requirement of ourselves for
Exactly.
yourself.
That it
Yeah.
has to happen that way no matter what.
Right. Yeah. Hmm. So how do you see this playing out with maybe clients? Like what happens with somebody who might have a lot of stuff going on, and maybe they're feeling stressed a lot of the time. There might be a lot of chaos happening, or they might have had some very difficult experiences in their lives. How does this work for them? How does someone just kind of get back into their natural functioning when they've never known how, or maybe they've never lived around anybody who's kind of in that place?
Right. Well, one of the things that we can do to kind of get our back in our natural self is to reconnect our mind and body to feeling this. Sorry, there's a sound somewhere going. I'm like, what is that?
It's funny
Got me distracted.
this morning I was in a meeting, and this woman, my boss, her little child was running across the room behind her. And she
Oh no.
was,
Yes. I know all the challenges of home offices these
yes.
days, right? Right. So, one of the things that we need to do, and the reason we call it mind body bridging, is that when our identity system wakes up, our minds and bodies disconnect. They
Mhm,
stop speaking to each other. They're no longer saying, they're not speaking the same language. Like my
okay.
mind is telling me one thing's happening and my
Mhm,
body's telling me another. Okay.
mhm,
And so they're just not on the same page. When they're not on the same page, we just don't function well. So, what
mhm.
we want to do is bridge our mind and bodies back together again.
Okay.
And one of the ways that we can do that, we call this a bridging awareness tool, is
Mhm,
to notice your five senses. So,
mhm.
just notice like the sounds around you, notice the ground underneath your feet, notice the gravity on your body, or notice how things feel in your hands or the air as you breathe. Just kind of noticing that can reconnect your mind and body back together, sort
Mhm.
of bringing you back to, the present moment, like what is
Okay.
happening right before me. And that helps put that system to sleep.
Mm.
Now, like I said, everybody has that system. We're not going to get rid of that system.
Mhm.
But one of the things that we want to do is learn to manage that system.
Okay. So we're not always at that high level
Yeah. Or it's
of
not always waking up.
always waking up. That's it. And when you were saying that, I think about this monster that starts off a little bit small, maybe more like a cartoon, but it gets bigger. And
Mhm.
as we're waking up that part of ourselves, that not that we're a monster, but we all
Yeah.
have that ability to kind of go kind of overboard
Yeah.
emotionally, and with reactivity and whatever else.
Yeah.
Once
We're
we're
not ourselves in that
Yeah,
moment. For
right.
sure, not us,
Yeah,
right? Or how we would
yeah.
truly act or what we would truly
Hmm.
say in that
And I
moment.
think most people realize that once they've had some kind of stressful situation, and it might have led to an argument or it might have led to something else, and afterwards when they can step back, they go, why did that happen? I don't get it. Like, I don't understand why it was seemed so important at the time, and then caused this internal kind of explosion, which kind of burst out onto everybody else around too. So stepping back afterwards, sometimes we do get that sense, but then it'll happen again and we do the same thing again.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
This intensity behind it, right? Like
Mm,
you feel this intense need to hurry up and do these things. And in the moment,
mhm.
it feels like justified. It feels like, yeah, I do need to do that. Right.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
then, later you think back, like, why did I really care about that? Like, what was so
Mm.
important about that?
Yeah. Mhm.
And that's the only difference is that system.
Mhm. So do you think some of the techniques you've talked about, bridging mind and body, so it's bringing our mind and our body back into conjunction and balance with each other, at least
Mhm.
momentarily, and then
Yeah.
that helps us to relax the system or put it to sleep, so then we can just operate from a more relaxed kind of, maybe not relaxed, but just more of a place that's more
Functional.
functional. Yeah,
Mhm.
because we want to be coming from that functional place more than not.
Absolutely.
What do you think that can help somebody who's experiencing kind of daily anxiety, or maybe does have a diagnosis of an anxiety condition or depression? Does mind body bridging help for people who have a diagnosis? Um, I understand it probably is not going to get rid of the condition necessarily, but can it help?
For sure. I mean, we can look at anxiety and depression as, those can be genetic factors of why you are diagnosed with that, like meaning that it was just passed on through your genes. And so it wasn't necessarily something environmentally that happened to you. But also, depression and anxiety can happen because of environmental things. And so those can be healed through mind body bridging. But also, if it's genetic and it's passed on to you, it can be managed a whole lot better through the use of the tools.
Okay. So when you say genetic, sometimes we're wired. It seems like some of us are wired for a certain way of being. Uh, but we don't have to, that doesn't have to become our fate necessarily, especially
Right.
if we learn a technique like mind body bridging, which
Mhm.
sounds like it's a fairly simple way of getting to a calmer and more functional place too.
Right. I
Um,
mean, just like people who are predisposed to diabetes, heart conditions, high blood pressure, you're not, just because it's in your family line doesn't mean you have to get it. And there are preventative measures you can take to make sure that if it does come, you're in a better spot
right.
or preventing yourself. So you think about it in the same way that if
Yeah.
I can learn to manage my mental health, that
Hmm.
I can sort of prevent some of those things or decrease the onset of when or how hard it sort of sets in.
Yeah. I've heard that it's also something that works really well for addictions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell me something about that? How does,
Yeah.
yeah, just
So
tell me a bit.
addiction
Yeah.
really is the fixer, right? So if we have an addiction to, let's say, alcohol, we'll use that for example, that we want to drink the alcohol when our system is awake, right? The reason that and it's not necessarily just drinking alcohol, but if it's an addiction for you and it's something that you're using to deal with emotional problems, or using it to deal with not wanting to be in your life or be a part of that, that becomes an addiction, right? Like you're
So it's
not.
kind of self-medicating and then you keep doing
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we're doing it
Mm-hmm.
because we're feeling those depressor thoughts I talked about, those stories were telling us. We don't like those. And so we have to fix them, and we can't figure out a way to fix them. So fixers can be negative things too. They can be addictions, they can be suicide, they can be self-harm. Like they aren't good things sometimes. But we're doing them to try to fix ourselves, but it's not a positive way to do it. So you can see how it would
Okay. Yeah.
perpetuate, and we would continually need to do that. And why it
Mm-hmm.
becomes an addiction is because
Yeah.
it's not truly going to fix you, because there isn't anything wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so recognizing what is setting off that system is
Mm-hmm.
really healing. In addiction work, we call those triggers, right? Like, what are my triggers? And so I call them requirements. What are the things? How can we find those? And we have a process called mapping that
Okay.
really hones in and finds those very quickly. Instead of traditional talk therapy, where you maybe have to talk to a therapist, or you have to really have somebody else there, mapping can help you identify those on your own, or very quickly with a therapist, to find out what is triggering
Mm-hmm.
that system to turn on, and then causing the addiction to be what's trying to fix us.
So mapping, it gives you insight, but I know from my own experience and seeing it in others, it can be very quick in getting to the point.
It does.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing how it
Yeah.
does. Yeah. Very
Whereas you could
intense.
drag it out, by other means for a long time, but it does get quickly to the point. And some of the terminology, the mapping, the bridging, the words like requirement and depressor thoughts, I wouldn't get bogged down too much in that, like for people that are listening, because they're actually very simple concepts.
Yeah.
And once you try it and you apply it, it is quite easy.
Yeah. I think once the best way to learn mind body bridging is to experience it. Once you
Right.
experience it, you're like, before that, you're like, how's this going to work? That's not going to work, Nikki. That's crazy talk.
Yeah.
But once you do it, you're like, whoa, that really did work. Why
Yeah.
did that work?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, on my website, I think we'll show that later, but
Mm-hmm.
I offer a free session, just a 15-minute video that walks you through the basics of those concepts we talked about: mapping, bridging, using your senses, identifying that system. Like, I walk you through that within 15 minutes, and you experience it, and then you know what it feels like and how that works.
And I agree, and I can't find your website.
It disappeared.
It disappeared, but hopefully I can find it. For now, what I'm going to do is, oh,
There it is.
there you are up there. Here, I think I could do it now. Can you see it now?
Yes. Yep. There
Yeah.
it is.
Okay, so this is Niki Olsen, and this is her website. And
Mhm.
I'm just going to get rid of that for a second, just to
Yep.
see, there's a lot of explanation on here, thinking about what it can do for you, even just for information. There's a lot of information on what the benefits are,
Mhm.
from using the mind-body bridging. What would you call it? Would you call it a practice, or would you call it
Yeah.
um, techniques, or
Yeah.
yeah,
Skills. Yeah.
skills?
Uh-huh. Yeah. We
Skills
kind
is,
of use.
yeah, okay. And really, with something like that, it's really skills for living that we can practice day to day.
Mhm.
And I know for myself, when I started with mind body bridging, it was just something that made some profound connections
Mhm.
uh, in a really short period of time.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of, I'm not doing my mapping too often. I do my bridging more than I do my mapping.
No, me too. Me too. Yeah.
But it's a good reminder for when I get stressed, I have to remind myself to get back into my body. So that's with that feeling of gravity, like feeling if I'm walking, really feeling my feet, being conscious of like you said, I don't know if you mentioned, you put your
Yeah.
hands in water, you feel the
Yeah.
water, And another thing for me is using sight. So I may just look at something, and I think kids experience this a lot. When I was a kid, my report card always said I like to stare out the window. Now, I don't think I was disassociating. I think it was a natural way that, I was able to kind of just kind of relax my system.
Yeah.
And it felt right, and I do that to this day, so I might just look at a tree or look out the window or just gaze at something, and I find that that can be really helpful.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
I'm just going to bring up this as well. This is about the institute, the Mind
Mhm.
Body Bridging Institute. Did you want to tell us a little bit about the founders and maybe a little bit about that and kind of what's behind it?
Yeah, so this picture you're showing here is Stanley and Carolyn Block. So they are the founders of Mind Body Bridging back in the early 90s. And so they recently started the institute at Utah State University, which is where if you're a clinician and you want to become trained in mind body bridging, you would go to that institute and become certified. Now that's kind of the process that people go through to do that. On my end, I'm already a certified individual, and so I help individuals just learn the skills to be able to help themselves. So the institute's basically for to become certified clinician, and then the certified clinicians help other people learn the tools to help themselves.
Mhm. And I think that the little bit that I originally had read about the mind-body bridging system and about the blocks is that, yeah, Stanley and Carolyn, is they really have a vision for the world. It's not just about a therapeutic tool or a skill-based tool. It's really about if we could live out of this place more often, things could be so different. I'm
Right.
thinking during this time of COVID, there's other techniques that work for people, certainly meditation and mindfulness. This is a little bit like mindfulness, but we really use our bodies from my experience of it. But it could do a lot to bring people more in sync with one another and a little bit more sort of world harmony.
Yeah.
I think if we all were in touch with something where we could put that I system to bed every once
Yeah.
in a while,
Right.
we'd have
Yeah.
fewer conflicts.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So what have I got here? I am bringing up the wrong things here. I'm trying to get back, and I guess I can stop. I'm going to have to edit some of this here. I'm going to stop the share. So I was wondering if you could tell me, Niki, what kinds of, I don't know if you have something like this. Do you have a favorite book or something that has inspired you and something that you come back to that you find helpful just in reminding you and keeping you on track personally? I know you're a mom, like you said before, and you've got lots of responsibilities and you've got your career. So is there anything that you turn to in terms of book or inspiration?
Yeah, I'm a very spiritual person. I belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we believe in the Bible and the Book of Mormon and studying
Hmm.
that every morning. I spend
Okay.
time studying that, and
Hmm.
that's kind of my go-to and my turn back to remind me who I am and where I come
Hmm.
from and the hope and
Hmm.
peace. But recently I've been in part of my study also reading a book called Eve and Adam Discovering the Beautiful Balance. And
Hmm.
I love
Hmm.
it because it's one of the first stories of history, right?
Hmm.
It's the story of opposition,
Hmm.
and it's the story that there is opposition in all things. And I
Hmm.
believe that's what the identity system is for me. It's the
Okay.
opposition that was placed in all things. And I love learning about that's not a
Hmm.
bad thing, that
Okay.
this opposition that's created in the world and within us is something that is needed in order for us to have choice, in order
Hmm.
for us, if we didn't have that opposition,
Hmm.
we wouldn't have choice. We would just
Hmm.
always be making the right choice, right? So we wouldn't have the opposing choice there, right? And so
Hmm.
that's kind of been my recent study, is just learning
Hmm.
about opposition and what that
Okay.
means in life. And so
So opposition external to us. What about internal kind of
both,
opposition? Both, yeah.
absolutely,
And
yes.
the
So
I system kind of gives us a glimpse of that too, right? Because we're
yes.
wrestling with that so much of the time. And I know from the mind body bridging, some of the literature is they talk about befriending the system.
Mhm.
And one way is recognizing it to
Yes.
start with, right? If you
Exactly.
recognize
And
it,
that,
yeah.
yeah. So we're not, it's not our enemy, right? Like opposition isn't our enemy. We're not trying to get rid of it. I think sometimes we get caught up in this world of like, I hope for a day when everything is perfect and I don't have to make choices anymore because it's just easy. But I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that's the point. Like we need to learn to become friends with that opposition, that identity system, whatever you
Yeah.
call that, and recognize that it's there, but it's not our enemy. But
Mm-hmm.
become friends with it and understand it and get to know it, and
Mm-hmm.
then we can be able to protect ourselves better in those
Mm-hmm.
situations.
And grow too.
Grow,
You don't
exactly.
grow without a little bit of pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes a little bit of
Yeah.
difficulty helps, but
Yeah.
not too much.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. You don't need to suffer.
So my other question is, do you have a favorite piece of music or song that kind of gives you inspiration or makes you feel good?
Yes. So I have on my phone, I pull this one up a
Mm-hmm.
lot. Have you heard
Yeah.
of Lauren Daigle? I think is how you say her name. She's a pretty popular on
Mm-hmm.
pop culture these days, but she has a song called I Am.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it. The first line says, I keep fighting with voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. And so she's just talking about, like, I think that's how women feel a lot of the time, right? Probably men too, but I think
Yeah.
women at a high rate is like, we just don't feel good enough a lot of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so in the song, it just really talks about hope. The song is called You Say, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of a spiritual song, but really it can be, you can make it anything you want. But she says, like, you say I'm loved, you say that I'm strong, you say that I'm helped, you say that I am yours. And so it
Mm-hmm.
just brings a lot of hope that, even though we have these voices in our minds telling us that we're not good enough,
Mm-hmm.
that there is hope, and those aren't necessarily true. There is something that's better and greater for us than those
Mm-hmm.
voices.
Mm. Great. That's your signature song now.
I love it. I pull it up all the time when I'm down and like play.
When I think of you, I'll think of that. I'm gonna have to dig it up and listen to it now.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Well, thank you so much, Niki, for being with us. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it. You bring a lot of wisdom and experience, and I know you're a good teacher
Thank
because
you.
I've experienced that.
Thank